welcome back to another Fine Art Friday. This is our last Fine Art Friday of the season, so thank you all for joining me this fall to learn about a few art movements and the artists that made them happen. Let's do a little recap of what we've learned so far before we start today's video on pop art. For our first video, all the way back in August, we talked about Impressionism and how artists like Claude Monet, Pierre-Auguste Renoir, and Camille Pissarro took their paints outdoors and focused on the feelings of a scene rather than painting exactly what they saw. In September, we talked about Cubism and focused on Pablo Picasso and Georges Braque, who broke their scenes into geometric shapes and flattened everything out. Last month, in October, we talked about Surrealism and artists like Salvador Dali, Joan Miro, and René Magritte, and how they used their dreams and other weird thoughts to create paintings and pieces that made the viewers ask questions. If you missed any of these videos or want to rewatch them, you can find them on the Tremont District Library Facebook page or on our website. Let's get started with our art movement for November. Pop art! Pop art was an art movement that started in the 1950s and 60s in Europe, specifically Britain, and in the United States of America. Remember how Dada art inspired Surrealism art? Well, pop art was inspired by popular people of the times, everyday things, and bright colors. There's a lot of great pop artists out there who created art that inspired the movement. A lot of them had similarities, like they wanted to try something new, and a lot of them had differences, like they tried something new in a lot of different ways. For this video, I want to focus on just two of them, Andy Warhol and Roy Lichtenstein. I think they did a great job of influencing the pop art movement, and their art does a really good job of showing the new style. Let's jump right in and check out one of the most famous pop artists in the United States, Andy Warhol. Warhol started off as an advertising artist and made art for fashion brands and other companies. Warhol was inspired by how advertisements could be made by the masses and distributed everywhere, and how they showed images that later became common in everyday homes. Take a look at this piece by Warhol that shows what he was thinking. This piece is called Campbell's Soup Cans and was created by Andy Warhol in 1962. Warhol was inspired by how uniform the cans looked when they were on a grocery store shelf, but how each one had differences, the type of soup. Warhol used paints and a stamp to create all 32 cans. This piece is considered one of the first pop art pieces, and it features an element that we'll see in many pop art pieces again: repetition. One concept in pop art that really took off was repetition, and how art could be a series of copies of repeated things. This was inspired by mass market advertising and how companies flooded their promotional markets, like TV and billboards, with the same image over and over again. Because Warhol really liked using repetition in art, but painting the same thing over and over again took a lot of time and precision, Warhol started using a method called screen printing to create his art. Screen printing is a type of art where an image is made out of glue on a screen. Only the pieces of screen that don't have glue on them will let any color through. Ink is then put on the screen and smoothed out over the design and then pressed onto the material that the artist wants to transfer the design onto. There are some local t-shirt printing companies in the area that use screen printing to make their shirts. Maybe you have one. The cool thing about screen printing is you can use one design with one color, or make it as complicated as many designs with many different colors. The cool thing about screen printing is that each screen can be used multiple times, kind of like a stamp. Check out these screen prints by Warhol. Each of these pieces, created in 1967, feature Marilyn Monroe, a popular actress in the 1950s. They all look almost exactly the same, but with very different colors for different parts of her face. How did Warhol do that? He used screen printing. He used different layers of screens covered in glue that made different shapes that, when put together, created Marilyn's face. Some of his screens might have looked like this. But what made Warhol choose all these crazy colors? Pop art was all about seeing what caught people's eye and trying new things. By using different color combinations for each Marilyn, he was able to make her seem like a whole new person in each portrait, and that was pretty cool. Which Marilyn is your favorite? Another important artist rose to fame during the pop art movement as well, Roy Lichtenstein. You might not know his name, But he was an artist who took lots of inspiration from the comic book industry and gave it lots of fame in return. Lichtenstein loved how newspaper presses made comics look so clean and uniform, and he liked to focus on using the primary colors, like a real printer would have. Lichtenstein made lots of styles of art, from paintings using stencils to prints and even to sculptures. Before we look at some of Lichtenstein's art, we need to see how printers made classic comic pictures back in the 1950s. Just like modern-day printers, old printers only used 4 main colors: cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. Printers used tiny dots spread apart and close together and overlapped to make different colors and different shades of those colors. These dots were called the Ben-Day process. Check out how these tiny dots can make whole new colors when you look at them further away. Lichtenstein was fascinated by this process, but he wanted to make the dots bigger and bolder so that people could see them. Lots of his art features Ben-Day dots on a larger scale. Wham is one of Lichtenstein's most popular creations. It features a fighter jet soaring through the sky and creating a large classic comic book explosion on the other page. In real life, this piece is huge. It's made up of 2 large canvases and is 5 feet and 7 inches tall and 13 feet and 4 inches wide. So while it's a little difficult to see the Ben-Day dots on this photo version, in real life, you would have been able to see them pretty clearly. One of the most exciting parts of this piece is the explosion, or the wham. Lichtenstein really liked this action part of comics, and later created sculptures of iconic comic-style explosions as well. Let's look at another one of Lichtenstein's comic-inspired pieces, but this time you'll be able to see the Ben-Day dots a little clearer. This piece is called Sunrise, and was created in 1965. At first glance, you can probably see how dots create the background behind the sun, the shading on the clouds, and the colorful portion on the bottom. If you can't yet, that's alright. Even though Lichtenstein painted large-scale versions, Ben-Day dots are really hard to see on a TV, phone, or computer screen. We'll zoom in so you can see them a bit better, or you can try printing out these pictures or seeing them in books to help you see better. When you first look at that bottom section, what color does it look like? Maybe a purple that fades into a light yellow. Let's take a closer look. Remember our 4 printer colors: cyan, magenta, yellow, and black? In some areas, both cyan and magenta dots are painted very closely together, which from a distance makes it look purple. When the color starts to fade to yellow, it's because more yellow dots are entering the mix. Look closely near the sun. Even behind the sun rays, it looks like it's glowing. This is because the magenta dots behind the sun are more spaced out and letting more of the white background through. It's super neat how Lichtenstein was able to take machine-made art and give it his own human-made twist. Okay, we learned a lot about art today. We learned about Andy Warhol and how he used the process of screen printing to create large amounts of the same image with small differences. We learned about how printers work and how Roy Lichtenstein took that process and made it man-made again. There's a lot of ways to make pop art style art at home, so let's get to it. Alrighty, for our project today, we are going to be making stamps and stamp art. Let's go through what's in your kit first. You have a sheet of sticky foam, 2 pieces of watercolor paper, 2 pieces of cardboard, a foam brush, and red, yellow, blue, and black paints. The first step for this project is making a design for your stamp. This can be as simple or as complex as you would like. I decided to make a little bumblebee for mine. The next step is transferring your image onto your foam. Remember, your design will be backwards. If you are using words, make sure to write the letters backwards. To make this easier, I cut out my design, flipped it over, and then just traced it onto the foam. Because my design has 2 layers, I had to cut up my drawing twice. You can use this method, or you can trace your design onto another sheet of scratch paper and cut layers out of that one so that you'll be able to see all your layers on paper before you start tracing onto your foam. Here's a quick example of how the image will flip over when it's stamped. See how I'm using letters and they are facing the right way on cardboard? When I stamp them, they end up backwards. The easiest way to avoid this is to make sure you write your letters backwards on your foam before you cut and stick it. The foam I used for my stamp wasn't sticky on the back, so I had to hot glue it. The foam in your kit will have paper you can peel right off the back and just stick to your cardboard. Stamping is simple. Use your foam brush to brush paint over your foam stamp. Try not to get paint on the cardboard, but it's alright if you do. When you're ready to stamp, flip your cardboard over and press down firmly. I would recommend doing a practice stamp on scratch paper before making your final stamp. Because your foam will squish a little bit when you press it down on your cardboard, there will be some spots in your stamp that don't transfer paint as well. Take a look at those places and then add more paint to them when you stamp again. Or if you like the designs it makes, keep it. My stamp has 2 layers, so I'm using 2 different colors. If you don't want your colors to mix as much when you stamp your second layer, you can wait for the first one to dry. Same goes for your foam brush. I cleaned mine with paper towels, but you can also wash your brush in between colors if you don't want any mixing at all. To clean off your stamps, use a paper towel and stamp away as much paint as you can, and then wipe it off. Did you notice that you only have red, yellow, blue, and black paints in your kit? I wanted to encourage each of you to use just the primary colors in black, like Roy Lichtenstein or the old printers would have. If you really want different colors, you can mix your paints to create them. Here are some of the color combinations I did for my stamp. You only have 2 pieces of cardboard in your kit, but you have plenty of foam to make more stamps with. If you want more layers for your stamp, or a whole new stamp, you can cut up your art box for more cardboard. The watercolor paper in your kit is great for stamps because it won't get as wrinkly with paint, and you can color over it with watercolor markers. But cardstock and other thick papers work too. When you finish your stamps, you can do lots of things with them. I chose to cut mine out and then add markers behind each one too. You can add solid colors, patterns, words, or anything you like. Thank you so much again for joining me for Fine Art Fridays this fall. I hope you all enjoyed making your stamps this month, and I hope you'll join me for more programs in the future. Bye, friends!